Commander Jake Morrison had seen death in 100 forms across 15 years of combat. He'd called in airstrikes that erased entire buildings, watched teammates bleed out in his arms, pulled triggers that ended lives before breakfast. But he'd never seen anything like this. The Hindu Kush mountains stretched endlessly before him, jagged peaks cutting into the pale Afghan sky like broken teeth. His SEAL team had been in position for 16 hours, watching the compound through high-powered optics. Intelligence said Ahmed Khalid was inside, the bomb maker, the butcher, the monster who'd turned market squares into mass graves. 243 confirmed kills. Women, children, families vaporized by his improvised explosive devices, designed specifically to maximize civilian casualties and create terror. Morrison's jaw clenched. Tonight, that number stopped growing. "Reaper, this is Overwatch," Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Target confirmed. Visual on Khalid, northeast window, second floor." Through his binoculars, Morrison could see him clearly. Khalid standing at the window, satellite phone pressed to his ear, animated conversation. Probably planning his next atrocity. "Copy that, prepare for." The sound reached him first. Not the sharp crack of a nearby rifle, but something different. A deep, rolling thunder that echoed across the valley like God's own judgment. The sound traveled for seconds before Morrison's brain registered what it meant. Someone had fired from miles away. Through his optics, Morrison watched Khalid's head simply disappear. Pink mist. The satellite phone tumbling through the air, body crumpling like a puppet with cut strings. "Contact, sniper fire," Sergeant Ortiz yelled, diving for cover. But Morrison didn't move. His combat-trained mind was already calculating. Wind, speed, bullet drop, the time between shot and sound. The mathematics didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. "Jesus Christ," Chen whispered, his face pale. "Where did that come from?" Morrison spun, scanning the opposite ridgeline with his thermal scope. Nothing. No heat signature, no muzzle flash afterglow. The shooter had already displaced, professional, invisible, gone. His secure phone buzzed. Encrypted message from JSOC intelligence. "Confirmed kill, KHALID AHMAD, HVTELIMINATED. Good work, Reaper actual." Morrison's blood ran cold. Good work. His team hadn't fired a single round. "Chen, get me distance calculations. Sound delay, trajectory analysis. I need to know where that shot originated." The lieutenant worked his tablet furiously, fingers flying across ballistic software. 30 seconds later, his face went white. "Commander, that's impossible." "Give me the number, Chen." 5,368 meters, sir." Chen looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. "That's 3.3 miles. The world record confirmed combat kill is 3,540 meters by a Canadian JTF-2 sniper. This shot is almost 2 kilometers beyond that." Morrison's mind raced. At that distance, you weren't just fighting physics, you were fighting the rotation of the Earth itself, Coriolis effect. Wind drift across 3 miles of mountain air, temperature gradients, humidity. The target wasn't even visible to the naked eye at that range. This wasn't just expert marksmanship. This was something else entirely. Spread out, tactical spacing. Whoever took that shot might decide we're next. Morrison's voice carried the weight of command, but inside, his instincts screamed confusion. The team moved with practiced efficiency, but Morrison's attention was elsewhere. Who had the skill for that shot? CIA's Special Activities Division. DVGRU sniper team he didn't know about. Foreign intelligence. As twilight bled across the mountains, Morrison made his way to the calculated point of origin. A rocky outcrop 5,368 meters from Khalid's compound. The climb took 40 minutes of hard movement through brutal terrain. He found the position easily. A master sniper had been here. Disturbed earth where a bipod rested, 3 stones stacked as a rear support, indentations in the dirt where someone had lain prone for hours. And there, deliberately placed on a flat rock where Morrison couldn't miss it, a single spent brass casing, .338 Lapua Magnum, custom hand-loaded round. Morrison picked it up with gloved hands, turning it in the fading light. Engraved in tiny, precise letters around the base were 3 words that would haunt every moment of his next 3 weeks. Justice finds everyone. He stood there as darkness swallowed the mountains, holding that brass casing, knowing with absolute certainty that everything he thought he understood about this war had just changed. Someone was out here, someone with skills that shouldn't exist, hunting the same monsters his team hunted, someone who got to the targets first, someone who wanted him to know they existed. Morrison's encrypted phone buzzed again, unknown sender, untraceable routing. The message contained just 2 words. "You're welcome." He stared at the screen, his heart pounding against his tactical vest. High above, on a distant peak already kilometers away, a figure in mountain camouflage collapsed a custom rifle, packed it into a weathered case, and disappeared into the darkness like smoke. The hunt had just begun. And Commander Jake Morrison didn't yet realize he wasn't the hunter anymore. He was being tested. The forward operating base felt like a pressure cooker when Morrison's team returned at 600 hours. Word had spread fast, another high-value target down, another impossible kill. The operators in the TOC Tactical Operations Center went silent when Morrison walked through, his face carved from stone. He'd been in the debrief room for 3 hours when CIA Station Chief Sarah Vance finally walked in, dropped a thick manila folder on the metal table, and lit a cigarette despite the no smoking signs plastered on every wall. "That's against regulations," Captain Rodriguez, the base commander, said weakly. Vance didn't even look at him. "So is lying in official after-action reports, Captain. Commander Morrison's team didn't kill Ahmed Khalid, so who did?" The room went dead silent. Morrison leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You tell me, Chief, because my team sure as hell didn't make that shot." Vance exhaled smoke, studying Morrison like a poker player reading a tell. Then she opened the folder and spread photographs across the table. 6 faces stared up at them, hard men with dead eyes, men Morrison recognized from classified target packages. Hamza al-Takriti, killed 7 months ago in northern Iraq, single headshot, 4,100 meters. She tapped the next photo. Ibrahim Nazari, eliminated 4 months ago outside Aleppo, Syria, 1 shot, 4,600 meters during a thunderstorm. Another photo. Yusuf al-Masri, dead 3 months ago in Yemen, 3,800 meters through a dust storm that had grounded all aircraft. Morrison leaned forward, his pulse quickening. "These are all high-value targets responsible for mass civilian casualties," Vance finished. "Chemical weapons attacks, market bombings, school massacres, the monsters even other terrorists think go too far." She tapped ash onto the floor. "And they're all being eliminated by someone who doesn't exist." "Multiple shooters," Rodriguez suggested. "Same ballistics," Chen said quietly from the corner. "I ran the data last night. All .338 Lapua Magnum, same custom hand-loading signature, unique rifling marks, same shooter." Vance nodded. "One person, operating across 4 countries, making kills that physics says shouldn't be possible. And here's what keeps me awake at night, gentlemen. She's been doing this for at least 8 months and we never knew." Morrison's head snapped up. Vance pulled out a ballistics report, sliding it toward Morrison. "Trigger pull analysis suggests smaller hand dimensions. Rifle stock modifications indicate a shooter between 56 and 59. Boot prints recovered from 1 site in Syria, women's size 8, tactical boots. Custom rifle grips manufactured for narrower hand spacing." She stubbed out her cigarette on the table, leaving a black mark. The locals in 3 different countries have started calling her the White Djinn, a ghost that appears from nowhere, kills evil men, and vanishes. Some think she's an angel, others think she's a demon. Vance's eyes were cold and calculating. I think she's former military, Tier 1 training, someone who went off the reservation and decided to wage her own personal war. That's insane, Rodriguez said. One person can't. Can't what? Morrison interrupted, his voice sharp. Can't make a 5,368-meter kill shot because I watched it happen. Can't track high-value targets across multiple countries. She's doing it. Can't operate alone in hostile territory for months without support. He stood, packing. We do that. SEALs do that. So why can't she? The room fell silent again. There's more, Vance said quietly. She pulled out another document, NSA intercept reports, signal intelligence, chatter analysis. 3 days before each kill, there's a spike in encrypted communications on frequencies we can't crack. Someone's feeding her intelligence. Real-time targeting data, movement patterns, security details. Morrison felt ice crawl down his spine. She has a network. A damn good one, better than some of our own assets. Vance gathered the photographs back into the folder. Which brings me to the real problem, Commander. All 6 of these targets, they were on our list too. She got to them first. She knew our targeting priorities before some of you had the briefings. That's impossible, Rodriguez sputtered. Our SCIF is locked down. Classification protocols are being bypassed, Vance cut him off. Either she's got access to our intelligence databases, or she's running a parallel intelligence operation so sophisticated it's predicting our moves independently. She fixed Morrison with a stare that could cut through armor. Personally, I think it's both. Morrison's mind raced through the implications. A rogue operator with Tier 1 skills, advanced intelligence capabilities, and an apparent mission to kill the worst of the worst before official military operations could reach them. What do you want from me? He asked Vance. Your team was closest to her last night. You found her hide site. You're the only operator who's been that close to her work. Vance leaned forward. I want you to find her, Commander. I want to know who she is, who's helping her, and what her endgame is. And then Vance's expression went flat. That depends on whether she's an asset we can use or a threat we need to eliminate. Morrison thought about that brass casing, the engraved words, "Justice finds everyone." He thought about Ahmed Khalid's 243 victims, families destroyed, children who'd never grow up. What if she's doing what we should have done months ago? Morrison asked quietly. Vance almost smiled. Then maybe we need to get better at our jobs, Commander. Or maybe we need to figure out how to work with ghosts. That night Morrison sat alone in his quarters, the brass casing on his desk next to his laptop. He'd run every database search he could access. Former female snipers with combat records, missing persons, killed in action reports flagged as questionable. Nothing matched. At 200 hours his encrypted laptop pinged. Incoming message, untraceable routing, anonymous sender. Morrison's hand hovered over the keyboard, then clicked it open. The message contained a single photograph, satellite imagery of a compound in the mountains near the Pakistan border. A red circle highlighted one building. Text appeared below. RASHID ALZAWARI, the schoolhouse bomber. Your briefing is at 800. I'll be there first. Stop looking for me. Start looking at your own house. Someone's selling you out. Morrison stared at the screen, his blood running cold. Al-Zawahiri was tomorrow's classified briefing. The target packet hadn't even been distributed yet. Only 6 people in the entire theater knew that name. She was right. Someone was feeding her information. Which meant someone in the chain of command was compromised. And the ghost in the mountains knew about it before he did. Morrison grabbed his tactical vest and headed for the TOC. He had 8 hours before that briefing. 8 hours to figure out who was betraying them. The hunt had just become a lot more complicated. The CH-47 Chinook helicopter cut through the night at 200 feet, nap of the earth flying to avoid radar detection. Morrison sat in the troop bay with his 5-man team, weapons checked, faces painted, ready for another hunt. But his mind was elsewhere. The 800 briefing had confirmed everything in that anonymous message. Rashid al-Zawahiri, the schoolhouse bomber, 40 children dead, another 63 wounded when his team detonated explosives hidden in textbooks and lunch boxes. The kind of evil that made even hardened operators want to pull triggers without asking questions. Intelligence placed him in a mountain compound 15 kilometers northeast of their insertion point. 3-day operation: observe, confirm, eliminate, or capture. Standard SEAL mission. Except Morrison knew she'd be there too. The ghost, the white djinn, and she'd somehow known about this target 12 hours before his own briefing. 2 minutes, the crew chief shouted over the rotor wash. Morrison checked his custom rifle one last time, a Mk13 Mod 7, Winchester Magnum, effective range 1,300 meters, state-of-the-art for military snipers. Suddenly it felt inadequate. The helicopter flared, and the team fast-roped into darkness, boots hitting rocky terrain in a combat crouch. The Chinook was gone in seconds, thundering back toward the base, leaving them alone in the mountains. "Spread out, tactical column. Chen, you're on point," Morrison ordered quietly. They moved like shadows through the rocks, night vision turning the world into green-tinted clarity. Every man on this team had hundreds of missions under their belts. They were the best America produced. But 90 minutes into their movement, Morrison's instincts screamed warning. They weren't alone. He called a halt with a closed fist, dropping to one knee. His thermal scope swept the ridgelands ahead, and there, for just 3 seconds, he caught her. A heat signature, human-shaped, moving with fluid precision across terrain that would challenge a mountain goat. Range: 340 meters. She was paralleling their route, staying just outside their normal detection range. Professional courtesy between hunters. Morrison's heart hammered. She was tracking al-Zawahiri too, and she'd positioned herself to watch Morrison's team without being seen. The level of fieldcraft was staggering. She knew their exact route before they'd even taken it. "Commander, thermal contact, 11 o'clock high," Chen whispered, his own scope finding the signature. "I see her." "Orders." Morrison watched her disappear over a ridge with movements that spoke of years of elite training. Delta Force, CIA Special Activities, foreign intelligence working a parallel operation. Or something else entirely. "We continue mission," Morrison decided. "Weapons tight, she's not hostile." "How do you know?" Sergeant Ortiz asked, tension in his voice. "Because if she wanted us dead, we'd have never seen her." Morrison stood, hand signaled to move out. "She's hunting the same target. For now, we let her." It was a violation of protocols. He should report the contact, call for backup, treat her as a potential threat. But Morrison's gut, honed by 15 years of combat, told him differently. They established an observation post on a ridgeline overlooking al-Zawahiri's compound by dawn. 3 buildings, 12 armed guards visible, vehicle traffic suggesting 20-plus occupants. For 2 days they watched, logged patterns, identified high-value individuals, built the targeting package. And for 2 days Morrison felt her presence in the mountains like a sixth sense, never seeing her directly but knowing she was there, watching, waiting, planning her own approach. On the second night, Sergeant Danny Ortiz was pulling security when Pakistani Border Patrol nearly stumbled onto their position. 8 soldiers, searching the rocks with flashlights, less than 50 meters away. Morrison prepared to give the order to engage. Compromising their position would mean mission abort, possible international incident, diplomatic nightmare. Then in the valley below, a rock clattered down a slope. The Pakistani patrol spun toward the sound, flashlights sweeping away from Morrison's team. They moved to investigate, voices calling out in Urdu, focused entirely on the distraction. Morrison scanned with thermal optics and caught a glimpse of her, 400 meters away, already displacing from the position where she'd deliberately made noise, drawing the patrol away. She'd saved them from compromise. "Who the hell is she?" Chen breathed. Morrison didn't answer. He was too busy watching her thermal signature move through terrain like water flowing downhill, effortless, natural, perfectly adapted to the environment. By the third day, the waiting ended. Al-Zawahiri's head of security emerged from the main building at 1600 hours, satellite phone to his ear, walking toward a vehicle. Then came the sound Morrison was starting to recognize, that deep, rolling thunder echoing across the valley. The security chief's chest exploded outward. He dropped instantly, dead before his phone hit the ground. Morrison's team froze. Where did that come from? Ortiz scanned frantically. Morrison was already calculating. Sound delay, 7 seconds. Distance, approximately 4,200 meters. He swept his spotting scope across the northwestern peaks and caught the faintest glint of sun on glass, a scope lens there and gone. She'd taken the shot through a sandstorm. The wind was gusting 30 knots. Visibility was degraded to less than 200 meters in the valley. Aviation was grounded. Morrison could barely see the compound through his optics. And she'd made a kill at 2.6 miles, through conditions that made the shot mathematically impossible. "Jesus Christ," Chen whispered. "That's not human, that's not possible." But Morrison was thinking about something else. Al-Zawahiri's security chief had been talking on that satellite phone. What if he was warning Al-Zawahiri about the American team? What if she just stopped intelligence from leaking? She wasn't just hunting, she was protecting Morrison's operation. As the sandstorm intensified and the compound erupted into chaos below, Morrison made a decision that would change everything. "Pack it up, we're moving to her position." "Commander, that's..." "An order, Lieutenant. She just saved our mission. I want to know who she is, and I want to know now." The team moved out through the sandstorm, climbing toward the peak where that impossible shot had originated. It took 90 minutes of brutal movement through wind that threatened to knock them off the mountain. When they reached the position, she was gone. But she'd left something behind. On a flat rock, weighted down against the wind with a spent brass casing, was a handwritten note on waterproof paper. "Morrison, Al-Zawahiri knows you're coming. Tipped off 6 hours ago. Compound will be empty by dawn. He's running to coordinates 34, 2,156 degrees N, 68, 8,547 degrees E. Pakistani border, 18 hours head start. Tomorrow 300 hours, grid 34, 5,721 degrees N, 69, 1,648 degrees E. Soviet bunker complex. Come alone, no backup, no comms, no weapons hot. We need to talk about who's selling you out. Trust no one at your fob." L. Morrison read it 3 times, his mind racing. She knew his name. She knew his base was compromised. She had intelligence on Al-Zawahiri's movements that his own chain of command didn't have. And she was offering a face-to-face meeting. It could be a trap, could be a foreign intelligence recruitment pitch, could be 100 different kinds of deadly scenarios. "Commander," Chen waited for orders, team watching. Morrison folded the note, pocketing it carefully. "Al-Zawahiri's running. We need immediate exfil for reposition." He keyed his radio. "Overwatch, this is Reaper Actual. Mission compromised. Request emergency extraction." But he didn't mention the note, didn't mention the meeting. Because if she was right, If someone at the FOB was compromised, then reporting this would get him killed. Or worse, it would get her killed. And Morrison suddenly realized he didn't want that. Whoever she was, she'd saved his team twice now. Tomorrow at 300, he'd find out why. Even if it meant walking into an ambush alone. Morrison told no one about the meeting. At 200 hours, he slipped out of the FOB through a drainage culvert that bypassed all security checkpoints, wearing civilian clothes with his sidearm concealed. If this was a trap, he wouldn't bring the trap to his team. The Soviet bunker complex was a relic from the 1980s, crumbling concrete half buried in the mountainside, rusted reinforcement bars jutting like broken bones. Morrison approached on foot, night vision scanning for ambush positions, laser tripwires, pressure plates. Nothing. The entrance yawned before him, darker than the surrounding night. His hand rested on his Sig Sauer P226 as he stepped inside, boots crunching on debris and spent shell casings 3 decades old. "You can holster that, Commander. If I wanted you dead, you'd have never made it up the access road." The voice came from the darkness ahead, female, American accent, carrying the flat confidence of someone who'd killed many times and lost count. Morrison's eyes adjusted to the deeper shadow, and she stepped into a shaft of moonlight filtering through a crack in the concrete. His breath caught. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-30s maybe. Blonde hair pulled back in a tactical bun, face lean and angular with a pale scar running from her left eyebrow to her cheekbone. She wore no uniform, just mountain camouflage pants and a dark tactical shirt. Her eyes were the color of winter ice, and they carried the weight of someone who'd walked through hell and decided to make it her permanent address. But it was her hands that made Morrison's pulse quicken. Calloused, scarred, the hands of someone who'd spent years behind a rifle, and on her right index finger he could see the distinctive callus of a trigger finger that had squeezed thousands of rounds. "Captain Alexis Kane," she said, not offering to shake hands. "Army Special Forces, 1st SFODD officially killed in action, Syria, August 17th, 3 years ago." Morrison's blood turned to ice. "Delta Force doesn't acknowledge." "Yeah, I know the script." Her smile was bitter. "I was part of that script, except I didn't die in that Syrian hellhole. My entire 12-man team did. I was the only one who crawled out of that ambush." She moved to an old Soviet map table, spreading out files and photographs with practiced efficiency. Morrison recognized classified intelligence reports, satellite imagery, financial records that should have been encrypted in Pentagon servers. "Our mission was supposed to be routine," she continued, her voice flat and dead. "Take down an ISIS logistics cell, in and out. But someone sold us out, Morrison. Someone in our own command chain gave our exact grid coordinates, our approach route, our timing, everything to the enemy." She pulled out a photograph, 12 men in combat gear, young faces smiling at the camera. A team photo. "They were waiting for us, 50 fighters, machine gun nests, RPGs. It wasn't a mission, it was an execution." Her finger traced over the faces in the photo. "Martinez took a round through the throat in the first 10 seconds. Thompson lost both legs to an IED they'd placed on our exfil route. Kowalski," her voice cracked slightly, "Kowalski held them off while I got to cover. I heard him screaming for 20 minutes while they tortured him." Morrison felt his jaw clench. He'd lost teammates before, knew that particular kind of pain. "I was pinned down for 6 hours, wounded, out of ammunition, waiting to die." Lex's eyes met his, and Morrison saw something terrifying there, not madness but absolute clarity of purpose. "That's when I heard the radio traffic. Our operations officer coordinating with ISIS fighters, giving them updates on American positions, on our backup QRF." "Who?" Morrison demanded. "Major Richard Vance, Sarah Vance's older brother. He was selling intelligence to the highest bidder. ISIS, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, didn't matter. Just needed cash to cover his gambling debts." She pulled out another document, financial records, encrypted communications, evidence of treason. I recorded everything before my comms went dead. Then I played dead for 36 hours in a mass grave with my team while ISIS fighters walked overhead. Her voice was mechanical now, reciting facts to keep emotion at bay. When they finally left, I crawled out, 12 miles to friendly lines. Took me 4 days. Why didn't you report? I tried. Lex's laugh was harsh. Went straight to CID, Jag, every investigator I could find. You know what happened? Richard Vance died in a training accident 3 days later. Fell off a mountain during a routine exercise. Case closed. And suddenly my evidence disappeared from secure servers. My testimony was classified beyond my clearance level. I was told my team's death was my fault, poor leadership, tactical errors. She slammed her fist on the table, and Morrison saw the rage burning beneath her controlled exterior. They were going to court-martial me for getting my team killed. The people I reported to were covering it up, making me the scapegoat, so I died instead. She pulled out a death certificate with her name on it. Training accident, Afghanistan, closed casket funeral. My file was sealed. Morrison's mind raced through the implications. How did you fake my death? Easier than you'd think when you've got special forces training and nothing left to lose. Lex pulled out a satellite phone, scrolling through contacts. Turns out, there are a lot of people in the intelligence community who don't like traitors, people who helped me disappear, gave me new identity papers, access to intelligence databases, financial resources. Who? People who believe in justice when the system fails. She met his eyes. People like Sarah Vance, who spent 2 years hunting her own brother before realizing what he'd become. She's the one who gave me my first target after I went underground. Morrison's head spun. Sarah Vance was helping her. For 3 years I've been waging my own war, Morrison. Hunting the monsters your system is too slow, too political, or too corrupt to stop. She spread out more photos. The 6 HVTs Morrison had seen in Vance's briefing, plus a dozen more. 23 kills across 4 countries. Every single one a mass murderer. Every single one responsible for hundreds of civilian deaths. And al-Zawahiri is planning something that'll make the schoolhouse bombing look like a warm-up. Lex pulled out a thick dossier, handing it to Morrison. Biological weapon, hemorrhagic fever virus, weaponized in a lab in Pakistan, designed to be released in Washington, D.C. metro system during morning rush hour. Morrison's blood froze as he flipped through the intelligence, technical specs, delivery mechanisms, timeline projections. Estimated casualties, 15 to 20,000 dead in the first week, another 50,000 infected, economic impact that would cripple the eastern seaboard. Lex's voice was ice. Launch window is 9 days from now. How did you? I've been inside al-Zawahiri's network for 18 months, Morrison. I've got sources your CIA doesn't know exist. Former ISI officers who hate what Pakistan's become. Taliban commanders disgusted by al-Zawahiri's tactics. People who'll talk to a ghost when they won't talk to your government. She pulled out her phone, showing him intercepted communications, financial transfers, shipping manifests. Your own intelligence community has pieces of this, but they're scattered across 6 agencies who don't share information. By the time your bureaucracy connects the dots, al-Zawahiri will have already released the virus. Her eyes bored into him. But I can stop him. I know his location, his timeline, his security details. I can end this in 48 hours. Then why do you need me? Lex was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm tired, Morrison. 3 years alone. 3 years of hunting without backup, without support, without anyone watching my 6. Her voice softened slightly. And because al-Zawahiri's compound is too hardened for a single operator, I need a team. I need your team. That's treason, operating outside chain of command. Your chain of command is compromised, Lex snapped. Every time your team gets close to a high-value target, they somehow get advance warning. You think that's coincidence? Morrison thought about the past 6 months. Targets escaping hours before raids, intelligence leaks, missions compromised. Someone at your fob is dirty, Morrison, maybe multiple someones. And until you figure out who, every mission you run is feeding information to the enemy. She leaned forward. Help me kill al-Zawahiri off the books, save 15,000 American lives, then we'll hunt the mole together. Morrison stood there, his entire worldview cracking. Everything he'd believed about duty, honor, chain of command. It was all being challenged by a dead woman offering him a chance to do what was right instead of what was authorized. I need time to think. You've got 12 hours, Lex interrupted. After that, I'm going in alone, with or without you. But Morrison, she pulled out a sat phone, tossing it to him. Al-Zawahiri's people know you're here. They know we met. The mole already reported this location to them. Morrison's hand instinctively went to his sidearm. Relax, I set up countermeasures, but you can't go back to the fob, not safely, not until we know who's compromised. She gestured to a backpack in the corner. Supplies, secure comms, coordinates for a safe house, make your choice there. Morrison stood in that ruined Soviet bunker, holding the sat phone, looking at a dead woman who'd become a ghost to fight a war his government couldn't win. 12 hours, Lex repeated, then I'm gone. She melted into the shadows, and Morrison was alone with the most important decision of his life. Trust the system that had failed her, or trust the ghost who'd saved his team twice. Outside, dawn was breaking over the Hindu Kush. Morrison made his choice. Morrison didn't return to the fob. Instead, he hiked to the safe house coordinates Lex had given him. An abandoned shepherd's hut 5 miles into the mountains, invisible from aerial surveillance, positioned with perfect sightlines on all approaches. For 6 hours, he sat alone with his thoughts and Lex's dossier on al-Zawahiri's biological weapon plot. Every page made the decision clearer, and every page made him angrier at the system he'd sworn to serve. At 1400 hours, he made the call that would change everything. Chen, it's me. Don't respond, just listen. Morrison kept his voice low, watching the valley below through binoculars. I need you to run a test. Access the mission database and check our last 6 operational target packages. Look for metadata, who accessed the files when and from where. Silence on the other end then. Commander, what's going on? Just do it. And Chen, don't tell anyone you're doing this. Not Rodriguez, not even Vance. When you have results, use your personal phone and call this number once, let it ring twice, then hang up. I'll call you back on a secure line. He gave Chen the number to Lex's sat phone and disconnected. 3 hours later, the sat phone rang twice and went silent. Morrison called back immediately. Talk to me. Chen's voice was tight with tension. Commander, you need to see this. Every single one of our target packages was accessed by an IP address that doesn't match any authorized terminal at the fob. Can you trace it? Already did. It's spoofed to look like routine maintenance access, but the actual origin point is. Chen paused, and Morrison heard keyboard clicks. Sir, it's coming from inside Captain Rodriguez's private office, and it's happening during hours when he's documented as being in meetings or off base. Morrison's jaw clenched. Rodriguez, the base commander himself. There's more, Chen continued. I pulled his financial records, the ones we can access, wire transfers to offshore accounts, significant deposits that don't match his salary, dating back 18 months. Lex had been right. The corruption went straight to the top. Chen, I need you to do something that'll probably end your career. Sorry. Bring Ortiz and Ramirez. Pack for a 3-day op, full combat load, long-range rifle kit, medical supplies. Meet me at grid coordinates 34, 5,892 degrees N, 69, 2,341 degrees E. Come dark, come quiet, and make damn sure Rodriguez doesn't know you're gone. Long silence. Then, this is about her, isn't it, the ghost sniper? Yeah. Are we going rogue, Commander? Morrison looked at the dossier in his hands. Technical specs for a biological weapon that would kill thousands of Americans in 9 days, while his own base commander profited from looking the other way. No, Chen, we're going to do our actual jobs for once, with or without permission. Another pause. Ramirez will bring the good bourbon. See you at 2100 hours, sir. The line went dead. Morrison sat back, exhaling slowly. He just committed his team to an unauthorized operation based on the word of a legally dead operative. If this went wrong, it was prison time, dishonorable discharge, end of everything they'd worked for. But if they did nothing, 15,000 people would die screaming. At 20:30 hours, Lex materialized from the darkness like she'd been conjured from the mountain itself. She'd been watching him all day. Morrison realized that now, testing whether he'd make the right choice or run back to his compromised chain of command. You called your team, she said, not a question. 3 operators I'd trust with my life. They'll be here in 30 minutes. And you didn't report back to Rodriguez. My base commander is selling intelligence to the people we're supposed to be killing, so no, I didn't check in with the traitor. Morrison stood, facing her. But I need to know something before my team gets here. Is this a CIA operation? Is Sarah Vance running you officially? Lex shook her head. Sarah provides intelligence when she can, looks the other way when she needs to, but this isn't sanctioned. If we get caught, she'll burn me to protect herself. That's the deal we made. So we're completely on our own. Welcome to my world, Commander. Lex pulled out a tablet, bringing up satellite imagery. Now let me show you how we're going to kill a monster and save a city. For the next 2 hours before Morrison's team arrived, Lex walked him through the most detailed intelligence package he'd ever seen. Al-Zawahiri's compound had 3 reinforced buildings, rotating security shifts of 42 fighters, vehicle barriers, and redundant communications systems. The biological weapon is in the basement of the central building, climate-controlled storage. Al-Zawahiri personally checks on it every morning at 600 hours. She zoomed in on architectural plans that shouldn't exist. He's paranoid, never sleeps in the same room twice, has 4 body doubles who move between buildings to confuse surveillance. How did you get this level of detail? I've had a source inside his household staff for 6 months, cleaning woman whose daughter was killed in the schoolhouse bombing. Lex's expression hardened. She's been documenting everything, waiting for someone to actually do something about it. Morrison studied the plans. The compound was a fortress. Even with perfect intelligence, a 4-man team can't take this. We'd need platoon strength, air support, probably armor. You're thinking like a conventional operator. Lex pulled up weather projections. There's a dust storm forecast for tomorrow night, visibility 0, satellite coverage blocked, that's our window. To do what, we still can't. I'll provide overwatch from here. She indicated a mountain peak 5,800 meters from the compound. That's 3.6 miles. I can reach any point in that compound. In 0 visibility, through a dust storm, that's impossible. Yeah, I've heard that before. Lex smiled coldly. I've made harder shots. Your team goes in during the storm. I guide you through thermal imaging and provide fire support. We have a 90-minute window before the storm passes and Pakistani military responds to the gunfire. And if they get there before we extract, then we die doing something that actually matters instead of waiting for bureaucrats to approve operations while people get slaughtered. Morrison heard movement outside, his team approaching with tactical discipline, spacing proper, weapons ready. That's them, he said. Last chance to back out, Kane. Once we brief them, there's no going back. Lex checked her rifle. a custom .338 Lapua Magnum that looked like it had been hand-built by someone who understood ballistics better than the engineers who designed it. I stopped backing out 3 years ago when I climbed out of that mass grave, Morrison. I'm all in. Question is, are you? Chen, Ortiz, and Ramirez entered the hut, weapons lowering when they saw Morrison was safe. Their eyes went wide when they saw Lex. "Gentlemen," Morrison said, "meet Captain Alexis Kane, officially dead, unofficially the best sniper any of us will ever work with." He pulled up the mission brief on his own tablet. "And for the next 48 hours, she's our commanding officer on an operation that doesn't officially exist." Ortiz whistled low. "So we're really doing this, going full renegade." "We're stopping a biological weapons attack on Washington, D.C., Morrison corrected. "Everything else is just paperwork." Ramirez set down a bottle of bourbon, grinning. "Told you I'd bring the good stuff. If we're committing treason, might as well do it with class." Chen was studying Lex with analytical intensity. "You're the white gin. The 5,368-meter shot on Khalid, that was you." "That was a warm-up," Lex replied. "Tomorrow I'm making shots that'll redefine what's possible." For the next 6 hours they planned. Lex shared every detail of her intelligence, guard rotations, structural weaknesses, al-Zawahiri's behavioral patterns. Morrison's team contributed tactical expertise, close-quarters battle experience, explosive breaching techniques. The plan that emerged was audacious, borderline suicidal, and absolutely brilliant. Chen would handle electronics, disabling communications, hacking security systems. Ortiz would breach and clear buildings with Morrison. Ramirez would secure the biological weapon and prepare it for destruction, and Lex would be their guardian angel, eliminating threats from a position so distant she'd be myth made manifest. At 300 hours, as they finalized equipment checks, Ortiz asked the question they were all thinking. "Captain Kane, why us? You could have recruited any operator, any team. Why trust a bunch of SEALs you've never met?" Lex was quiet for a long moment, staring at her rifle. "Because 3 years ago my team died while I listened to them scream. Because I've been alone since then, hunting monsters in the dark, wondering if I'm becoming one myself." She looked up, and Morrison saw vulnerability beneath the ice. "And because when Morrison had a choice between duty and doing what's right, he chose right. That's rare, worth fighting for." She stood, slinging her rifle. "Get some sleep. We move at 1800 hours tomorrow. And gentlemen," a ghost of a smile crossed her scarred face, "if we pull this off, drinks are on me. If we don't, it's been an honor." Morrison watched his team settle in, their choice made, their course set. They were going to war, off the books, outside the law. To save lives the system had already written off. And somehow, that felt more right than any authorized mission he'd ever run. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of preparation and growing dread. Morrison's team ran equipment checks 3 times, zeroed weapons, reviewed the assault plan until every man could recite it backwards. But underneath the professional routine, tension coiled like a spring wound too tight. At 1100 hours, Morrison's personal phone buzzed, a text from Sarah Vance. "Where the hell are you? Rodriguez is asking questions. Call me now." He powered the phone down and removed the battery. That bridge was burned. Lex spent the morning on her custom rifle, hand-loading rounds with obsessive precision. Morrison watched her work, each bullet weighed to the exact grain, powder charges measured 3 times, brass cases inspected under magnification for microscopic flaws. At 5,800 meters, a single grain of powder difference means missing by 2 feet, she explained, not looking up from her work. "At that distance, I'm not fighting the target. I'm fighting physics itself." "How many shots like that have you made?" "In combat, 17 confirmed kills over 5,000 meters, another 9 between 4,000 and 5,000. She held a completed round up to the light, examining it like a jeweler inspecting a diamond. People think sniping is about shooting. It's not. It's about mathematics, meteorology, patience, and accepting that you're trying to do something the universe says is impossible. And tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, I'll be shooting through a dust storm with zero visibility at targets I can only see through thermal imaging. Lex smiled coldly. So basically Tuesday for me. At 1400 hours, Chen's tablet pinged with an intercept. Pakistani military communications indicating increased border activity. Someone had tipped them off to expect an incident. Rodriguez is covering his bases, Chen said grimly. If we succeed, Pakistani military captures or kills us. If we fail, al-Zawahiri eliminates us. Either way, Rodriguez's operation stays hidden. Then we don't give him either option, Morrison replied. We win fast, extract faster, and disappear before anyone knows we were there. But at 1630 hours, everything changed. Lex's sat phone buzzed, encrypted text from her source inside al-Zawahiri's compound. She read it, and Morrison watched her face go pale. What? Al-Zawahiri's moving up the timeline. The biological weapon ship's out tonight at 2200 hours. Pakistani military escort to Karachi, then container ship to the United States. Her hands clenched into fists. We're out of time. Morrison's mind raced. The dust storm wasn't forecast until tomorrow night. Moving now meant no cover, full visibility, and Pakistani quick reaction forces 30 minutes away instead of blocked by weather. We can't assault in daylight. We don't have a choice. Lex stood abruptly. If that weapon leaves the compound, we'll never get another shot at it. It'll be on a ship in international waters with security we can't touch. Then we call it in, get official assets. To do what, Morrison? Rodriguez will sabotage any official operation. By the time your chain of command verifies the intelligence and gets authorization, that weapon will be halfway across the Indian Ocean. She grabbed her rifle case. I'm going, with or without you. Silence filled the hut. Ortiz looked at Ramirez. Chen looked at Morrison. This was the moment, the point of no return. We're not ready for a daylight assault, Chen said quietly. No storm cover, full enemy strength, Pakistani military response time cut in half. I know the odds, Lieutenant, Morrison replied. He looked at Lex, seeing the desperate determination in her eyes, a woman who'd lost everything and rebuilt herself into a weapon with one purpose. But she's right. We don't get another chance at this. He turned to his team. I won't order you to come. This is volunteer only. Anyone who wants out, no judgment, no questions asked. Nobody moved. Ramirez broke the silence. Sir, with respect, if we wanted safe careers, we wouldn't be SEALs. Let's go kill some bad guys. Hoorah, Ortiz added, chambering around. Chen just nodded, already repacking his gear for immediate departure. Morrison felt pride and terror in equal measure. These men were about to risk everything on the word of a ghost and a commander who'd gone rogue. Then we move in 2 hours. Lex, what's your setup time to shooting position? 3 hours minimum. I need to pre-position before you assault. She was already breaking down her rifle, packing it into a weathered case that had seen a dozen countries. I'll move out now. You breach at exactly 2100 hours. Not a minute early, not a minute late. That gives you barely enough time. I've done more with less. Lex shouldered her pack, easily 70 pounds of rifle, ammunition, water, and survival gear. Morrison, there's something you need to know. My source inside, the cleaning woman. What about her? Al-Zawahiri discovered her yesterday. She's in the compound basement, alive for now. He's using her as bait, hopping I'll come for her. Lex's jaw was tight. He knows I'm out here, has known for weeks. This whole thing, it's a trap. Morrison felt ice in his veins. And you're still going. She risked everything to help me. Gave me 18 months of intelligence that saved hundreds of lives. I don't leave people behind. Lex met his eyes. So yeah, I'm walking into a trap. Question is, are you? Morrison thought about his career, his team, the rules he'd sworn to follow. Then he thought about 15,000 Americans dying from a biological weapon because he'd been too afraid to break those rules. "We're coming," he said simply. Lex nodded once, respect and gratitude in her expression. Then she moved to the door, pausing at the threshold. "Morrison, if this goes bad, if we don't make it out, I want you to know something." She didn't turn around. "For 3 years I've been alone, a ghost, dead to everyone I ever knew. Tonight, for the first time since my team died, I'm not alone anymore." Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. "Thank you for that." Before Morrison could respond, she was gone, melting into the late afternoon shadows like she'd never existed. Chen broke the silence. "She's going to get herself killed trying to save that source." "Probably," Morrison agreed. "Which is why we're going to make sure she doesn't have to choose between the mission and the rescue." He pulled up the compound layout on his tablet, mind already recalculating the assault plan. New objective: we extract the source first. Ramirez, you're on the biological weapon. Ortiz with me on the rescue. Chen, you disable their communications before we breach so they can't call for reinforcement. "That's splitting our force dangerously thin," Chen observed. "Everything about this operation is dangerous, Lieutenant. We're just choosing which danger we're willing to live with." Morrison checked his watch. 90 minutes until we move. Get some food in you. Hydrate. Write your letters home if you need to." As the team prepared, Morrison stepped outside, watching the sun descend toward the Hindu Kush peaks. Somewhere up in those mountains, Lex was climbing toward a position where she'd make impossible shots to save people she'd never met. A woman who died 3 years ago and turned herself into a guardian angel for the damned. His sat phone buzzed. Text from Lex. "Forgot to mention that bourbon Ramirez brought. Make sure someone drinks it. Expensive stuff. Would be a shame to waste it." Morrison smiled despite the tension. Then, "If you don't make it back, we're drinking it in your honor. If you do make it back, you're buying the next round." 3 dots appeared then. "Deal. See you on the other side, Commander." Morrison pocketed the phone and went back inside to prepare for the mission that would either save thousands of lives or end his own. Either way, there was no going back. The die was cast. At 1900 hours, Morrison's team loaded into a stolen civilian truck, old Toyota Hilux that wouldn't draw attention on mountain roads. They drove with lights off, navigating by night vision, radio silence absolute. 30 minutes out from the compound, Chen's electronic warfare equipment picked up the security frequency. They could hear al-Zawahiri's men on patrol, confident, joking about the American ghosts that would never come. Morrison checked his watch. 20:45 hours. 15 minutes until breach. Somewhere above them, in darkness and isolation, Lex was settling into position behind her rifle, alone against an army. "Command, this is Overwatch," her voice crackled through their encrypted channel. "I'm in position. I have eyes on compound. 43 hostiles visible. Vehicle movement indicates biological weapon is being loaded for transport." "Copy, Overwatch. Stand by for assault." Morrison's voice was calm, professional, betraying none of the adrenaline flooding his system. "Morrison," Lex's voice was quiet. "Whatever happens tonight, it's been an honor." "Save the speeches for after, Captain. We've got work to do." "Hooah!" The truck stopped 2 kilometers from the compound. Morrison's team exited in tactical silence, checking weapons one final time. 14 minutes until they assaulted a hardened compound defended by 43 enemy fighters, protected by Pakistani military that could arrive in 20 minutes, to stop a biological weapon attack that officially didn't exist. Chen looked at Morrison. "Say the word, boss." Morrison took one breath then, Let's go save the world. They moved into the darkness, 4 men against an army. Above them, a ghost chambered her first round. The storm was about to begin. At exactly 2100 hours, Chen pressed the button on his electronic warfare device. Every radio, cell phone, and communication system within Al-Zawahiri's compound went dead simultaneously, a bubble of silence that would last exactly 18 minutes before backup systems kicked in. 18 minutes to infiltrate, rescue, destroy, and escape. The clock started now. Morrison's team moved like shadows across the open ground, utilizing the brief window of electromagnetic chaos. 200 meters, 150. Then the first guard died. The suppressed crack of Lex's rifle was barely audible from 5,800 meters away, but the guard's head snapping back was unmistakable. He dropped without a sound. Overwatch has initiated. Lex's voice was ice-calm in Morrison's earpiece. You're clear to north entrance. Another guard turned to investigate his fallen comrade. Another distant crack, another body. Morrison ran harder. Lex was burning through her ammunition to give them this chance, every shot a mathematical miracle at nearly 4 miles distance. They reached the compound wall. Ortiz placed the breaching charge while Morrison provided security. 3 seconds. The charge detonated with a muffled whump, blowing a man-sized hole in the concrete. Inside, chaos erupted. Al-Zawahiri's men realized they were under attack, but couldn't understand from where. Fighters ran in confusion as Lex systematically eliminated anyone who posed a threat to Morrison's team. Her precision was surgical, headshots through windows, soldiers dropping mid-stride, officers killed before they could organize a defense. Basement access east side of main building, Lex directed. 3 hostiles guarding the door, engaging now. Through Morrison's night vision, he saw 3 guards suddenly collapse in rapid succession. 3 shots, 3 kills, less than 4 seconds. Impossible, absolutely impossible at that range. But Lex wasn't fighting possibility anymore. She was fighting for lives. Morrison's team breached the basement door. Ortiz went first, rifle up, clearing corners with brutal efficiency. They descended into darkness, emergency lighting casting everything in red. And there, chained to a pipe in the corner, was a woman in her 50s, beaten, bloodied, but alive. The source. The cleaning woman who'd risked everything. Ramirez, get her out, Ortiz with me. The weapons deeper in. They pushed further into the basement complex while Ramirez cut the woman's chains and started carrying her toward the exit. Morrison and Ortiz found it in a temperature-controlled vault, a metal case marked with biohazard symbols, chilled storage keeping the virus stable. Thermite grenades, Morrison ordered. We burn it all. Ortiz was placing charges when gunfire erupted upstairs. Heavy machine gun fire. Al-Zawahiri's reinforcements had organized a counterattack. Overwatch, we're taking heavy fire at ground level. Chen's voice crackled with stress. I see them, Lex replied, her breathing controlled despite what Morrison knew was an exhausting rate of fire. Engaging. Through the basement ceiling, Morrison heard the chaos above. Screams, explosions, the distinctive crack of Lex's rounds impacting targets. She was firing continuously now, supporting Chen, who was pinned down at the entrance. But even a ghost has limits. Overwatch, I'm down to my last magazine, Lex reported, and Morrison heard the first trace of concern in her voice. 15 rounds. Make them count. Morrison and Ortiz finished wiring the vault. Charges set, 30-second fuse, moving to extract now. They ran for the stairs but found the route blocked, ceiling collapse from an RPG blast. Smoke, fire, debris everywhere. Alternate route, Morrison shouted, redirecting through a service corridor. Outside, Chen was fighting for his life against a dozen enemies closing in. He'd taken a round through the shoulder but kept firing, knowing that if he fell, the entire mission died with him. Lex's rifle spoke once, twice, 3 times, each shot dropping an enemy fighter advancing on Chen's position, but she was running dry and more fighters kept coming. "Morrison, you need to move now," Lex's voice was urgent. "Pakistani QRF inbound, 6 minutes out. Helicopter gunships detected." Morrison burst from the building with Ortiz, firing on the move. They reached Chen's position and dragged him toward the extraction point, where Ramirez waited with the rescued source and the truck. But al-Zawahiri's men weren't giving up. 20 fighters formed a perimeter, cutting off the escape route. Morrison's team was surrounded, outnumbered, running out of ammunition. "Overwatch, we're trapped. Can't reach the vehicle." Silence on the radio. Then, "Morrison, I'm out of ammunition." Morrison's heart sank. Without Lex's Overwatch, they were dead. The mission was over. But then Lex's voice came back. Different now. Not the calm precision of a sniper, but the fierce determination of a warrior who'd already died once and refused to do it again. "Correction, I'm out of rifle ammunition, but I've still got a pistol and 2 grenades. Coming to you." "Negative. Your position is 5,800 meters." "Was 5,800 meters. I've been displacing closer for the last 10 minutes. Morrison heard movement in her transmission, the sound of someone running at full sprint down a mountain. "I'll reach you in 3 minutes. Hold position." "Lex, that's suicide." "No, Commander. That's what we do for our teams." Her breathing was ragged from the sprint, carrying 70 pounds of gear down treacherous terrain in darkness. "I told you I don't leave people behind. That includes you." Morrison looked at his team, Chen wounded, Ortiz down to his last magazine, Ramirez protecting the rescued woman. They'd completed the mission, destroyed the biological weapon, saved 15,000 lives. But they were about to die doing it. Unless a ghost could run fast enough to save them. 2 minutes, Lex gasped. Morrison could hear her boots pounding on rock, the sound of someone pushing beyond human endurance. Al-Zawahiri's fighters were closing in. Morrison could see their muzzle flashes, hear their shouts of triumph. 50 meters, 40. 1 minute, Lex's voice was pure willpower now. Morrison and his team formed a defensive circle, firing their last rounds. Chen collapsed from blood loss. Ortiz took a round through the leg and went down hard. 30 meters, 20. Then, from the darkness behind the enemy fighters, came the sound Morrison had been praying for, the distinctive crack, crack, crack of a suppressed pistol, fired by someone who never missed. Lex hit them from behind like a force of nature. She covered 5,000 meters in under 10 minutes, descending the mountain in a controlled fall that should have killed her. She moved through al-Zawahiri's fighters with deadly efficiency, pistol shots to center mass, rifle butts to faces, a knife appearing in her hand to slash and cut. She fought like someone who'd crawled out of a mass grave and decided death would have to try harder. Morrison rallied his team. "Move now." They ran for the truck while Lex covered their retreat, her pistol finding targets in the darkness with impossible accuracy. When the slide locked back empty, she threw the weapon at an advancing fighter, stunning him, then detonated her first grenade into the cluster of enemies. The explosion bought them 5 precious seconds. Morrison reached the truck, throwing Chen and Ortiz into the back. Ramirez got the source secured and took the wheel. But Lex was still fighting, 60 meters back, surrounded down to her knife and 1 grenade. "Lex, break contact." She turned to run, but Morrison saw the RPG gunner taking aim at the truck. Saw Lex see it too. Saw her make the calculation. She could run and let the RPG destroy the truck, killing everyone. Or she could stay and die, buying them time to escape. Morrison watched her smile, that cold, terrible smile of someone who'd already made peace with death years ago. She pulled the pin on her last grenade and charged the RPG gunner. "No," Morrison screamed. But Lex was already committed, sprinting toward the enemy position. The RPG fired wild as she crashed into the gunner, bodies tangled, her grenade detonated. The explosion lit up the night. Morrison couldn't see if she'd survived, couldn't see anything through the smoke and fire. "Commander, we have to go," Ramirez shouted. "Pakistani helicopters inbound 2 minutes." Morrison was halfway out of the truck, ready to run back for her. Then from the smoke a figure stumbled into view, limping, bleeding, but alive. Lex collapsed against the truck as Morrison dragged her inside. "Drive, drive now." Ramirez floored it, the old Hilux roaring away from the compound as Pakistani gunships appeared over the mountain ridge, searchlights sweeping the area. Behind them, the vault charges detonated. The entire compound erupted in a massive fireball as thermate grenades burned hot enough to incinerate the biological weapon and everything within 50 meters. Al-Zawahiri's plan died in that fire. 15,000 Americans would wake up tomorrow, never knowing how close they'd come to death. Morrison looked at his team in the back of the bouncing truck, Chen unconscious from blood loss, Ortiz with a shattered leg, the rescued Source weeping quietly, and Lex holding her side where shrapnel had torn through her vest. They'd done it, against impossible odds, against orders, against every rule of engagement. They'd won. "Extraction point is 12 clicks northeast," Ramirez called from the driver's seat. "CIA transport waiting at the border." "Sarah Vance?" Morrison asked. Lex nodded weakly, wincing with pain. "She's been tracking us, has a stealth helicopter standing by." "So this was authorized?" "After the fact, maybe." Lex coughed, tasting blood. "She's good at making unauthorized operations look official once they succeed." Morrison pressed gauze to her side wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "You almost died back there." "Almost doesn't count in our line of work, Commander." She met his eyes and Morrison saw the truth there. She'd been ready to die, expected it, welcomed it even. Until his team gave her something to live for again. "Thank you," Morrison said quietly. "For what?" "For running 5,000 meters down a mountain to save us, for fighting 40 men alone, he struggled to find words, "for being who you are." Lex's expression softened for just a moment. "You did the same for me, Morrison. You trusted a ghost, believed when everyone said I was crazy, fought beside me when it could have ended your career." She gripped his hand, her fingers cold and slick with blood. "We're even now." The helicopter extraction went smoothly. Vance's people were professionals who didn't ask questions. Within 20 minutes they were airborne, heading for friendly territory. Morrison watched Al-Zawahiri's compound burning in the distance, Pakistani military swarming over the ruins. One mission, one night. Everything had changed. The CIA safehouse in Kabul was sterile and anonymous, the kind of place where people disappeared into paperwork and convenient narratives. Morrison sat in a metal folding chair, hands zip-tied behind his back, watching Sarah Vance pace the room like a caged predator. 12 hours since extraction. His team was in medical, under armed guard. Lex was somewhere in the building, also detained. The mission's success meant nothing if Vance decided they were liabilities. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Vance finally spoke, her voice dangerously quiet. "Stopped a biological weapons attack that would have killed 15,000 Americans," Morrison replied evenly. "You conducted an unauthorized military operation on foreign soil, destroyed property, killed Pakistani nationals, created an international incident." She leaned close. "You committed treason, Commander." "Then court-martial me. But that weapon is ash and those people are alive. I'll take that trade." Vance studied him for a long moment, then pulled out a knife and cut his zip ties. Morrison rubbed his wrists, confused. "What?" "Relax, Morrison, you're not under arrest." She poured 2 glasses of whiskey, sliding one across the table. "That performance was for the recording devices. Official stance is you're in deep trouble. Unofficial stance, she raised her glass. You just prevented the worst terrorist attack since 9/11. Morrison didn't touch the whiskey. And Lex, my team. Your team is being treated and will receive classified commendations they can never discuss. As for Captain Kane, Vance's expression was unreadable. That's more complicated. She saved thousands of lives. She's been dead for 3 years, Morrison, officially. Legally, you can't give medals to ghosts. Vance took a long drink. But you can give them new missions. A door opened, and Lex walked in, showered, bandaged, wearing fresh tactical gear. She looked exhausted but alive, those winter-ice eyes sharp as ever. Tell him, Vance said to her. Lex sat across from Morrison. For 2 years, I've been Sarah's off-books asset. Sanctioned black operation buried so deep even the president doesn't know about it. I hunt targets the official system can't touch, terrorists protected by politics, intelligence leaks, or bureaucratic paralysis. You've been CIA this whole time. Independent contractor is more accurate, Vance corrected. Captain Kane operates with substantial autonomy. I provide intelligence, she provides results. No oversight committees, no congressional briefings, no lawyers telling us what we can't do. Morrison's mind reeled. The whole thing, Al-Zawahiri, the biological weapon, my team, was that all a test? Partially, Vance admitted. We needed to know if a Tier 1 operator would trust evidence over orders when the system was compromised. Whether someone like you could work outside traditional structures when lives were at stake. And Rodriguez. Captain Rodriguez was arrested 4 hours ago. Financial crimes, espionage, providing material support to terrorist organizations. Vance's smile was predatory. The evidence Captain Kane gathered over 18 months made the case airtight. He's looking at life in Leavenworth. There were others, Lex added. 2 CIA officers, an NSA analyst, a State Department liaison, all selling intelligence, all arrested simultaneously using evidence from my operations. Morrison absorbed this. So you used me, used my team to clean house. We used you to save 15,000 lives, Vance corrected sharply. The house cleaning was a bonus, and now I'm offering you a choice, Commander. She pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. Your official after-action report says you pursued Al-Zawahiri based on intelligence from a classified source. Pakistani military arrived and engaged hostile forces. You and your team extracted under fire. Routine operation that went slightly sideways. She tapped the folder. Sign it, go back to your unit, get promoted, and forget this ever happened. Lord. Vance pulled out a second folder. Or you join my operation. Work with Captain Kane. Hunt the monsters too dangerous for conventional teams. Operate in the shadows where bureaucracy can't reach. Morrison looked at Lex. You knew about this, knew I was being recruited. Not initially, she said. But Sarah and I discussed it after you made the choice to help me. You passed the test, Morrison. Question is, do you want the job? Morrison thought about his career, his team, the rules he'd spent 15 years following. Then he thought about Al-Zawahiri's biological weapon, about the 15,000 people who'd go home tonight never knowing how close they'd come to death. What happened to Al-Zawahiri? He asked. He wasn't in the compound. Lex's smile was cold. He fled to a safe house in Karachi, used a private jet to escape to Yemen, thought he was safe. Thought. Past tense. She pulled out her phone, showing Morrison a satellite image timestamped 3 hours ago. A mansion in Yemen, half collapsed, emergency vehicles surrounding it. Drone strike, Hellfire missile. Al-Zawahiri and 6 of his top lieutenants eliminated while planning their next attack. The biological weapon we destroyed was just the first attempt, Vance explained. He had backup plans, secondary targets, alternative timelines, so we ended him permanently before he could try again. Morrison stared at the image. That's assassination, extrajudicial killing on foreign soil. That's justice, Lex interrupted, her voice hard. Justice for 40 schoolchildren, for 243 people his bombs murdered, for every future victim he'll never get to kill now. The system would have taken years to bring him to trial, Vance added. Lawyers, extradition fights, political negotiations. Meanwhile, he'd have continued planning attacks. She leaned forward. We don't have years, Morrison. We have moments. Windows of opportunity measured in hours. That's where operators like you and Captain Kane come in. Morrison sat in silence, processing everything. This wasn't the military he joined. Wasn't the clean chain of command, rules of engagement warfare he trained for. This was something darker, more necessary, more honest about what it took to stop monsters. My team, he finally said. Chen, Ortiz, Ramirez, what happens to them? They go back to their unit with commendations and non-disclosure agreements, Vance replied. This conversation never happened. They did their jobs perfectly and their careers are intact. And if I say no, go back with them. Then you go back with them. No hard feelings, no repercussions. Vance's expression was sincere. This has to be voluntary, Morrison. What we're offering, it's not for everyone. It's dangerous, legally ambiguous, and lonely. You'd be giving up normal life, normal career progression, maybe normal relationships. Lex spoke quietly. You'd be becoming a ghost, like me, dead to most of the world, living in the shadows, fighting wars nobody will ever know about. She met his eyes. It's not a life I'd recommend, but it's a life that matters. Morrison thought about the past week, about impossible sniper shots and biological weapons, about corruption at the highest levels in systems too broken to protect the people who needed it most, about a dead woman who'd crawled out of a mass grave and made herself into something the monsters feared. If I join, he said slowly, I'd work with Captain Kane directly. You'd be partners, Vance confirmed. She handles long-range precision operations. You handle close-quarters direct action. Together, you'd be the most dangerous team I've ever fielded. Lex raised an eyebrow. Can you handle taking orders from a woman who's officially dead, Commander? Morrison smiled for the first time in days. Captain, I just watched you run 5,000 meters down a mountain to save my team, then fight 40 men with a pistol and a knife. I'd follow you into hell if you asked. Good, Lex replied, because that's basically the job description. Morrison picked up the second folder, the one offering him a place in the shadows. Inside were orders transferring him to a classified unit that didn't officially exist, a death certificate listing him as killed in action, a new identity, a new life. He thought about his family who'd mourn him, his friends who'd never know the truth, everything he'd be giving up. Then he thought about those 15,000 people in Washington, D.C. who'd wake up tomorrow, drink their coffee, complain about traffic, hug their kids, all alive because he'd chosen to break the rules. Morrison signed the paperwork. Vance nodded approvingly. Welcome to the program, Commander. Your first mission briefing is in 72 hours. Until then, get some rest. You've earned it. She left the room, leaving Morrison alone with Lex. Any regrets? Lex asked. Ask me in a year. Morrison stood, extending his hand. Partners. Lex shook it firmly, her grip strong despite the bandages. Partners. Though I should warn you, I work alone. Have for 3 years. Might take me a while to remember how to work with someone. Good thing I'm patient. Also, I'm not great with feelings, or conversation, or really any human interaction that doesn't involve shooting things from very far away. Morrison laughed. Perfect, I'll handle the talking, you handle the impossible shots. 3 days later, Morrison stood on a remote airfield as dawn broke over the Hindu Kush. His death had been announced, funeral scheduled for next week. His team had sent flowers and cried at the memorial service. Chen, Ortiz, and Ramirez knew the truth. that their commander had chosen a different path. They'd shaken his hand one final time, understanding in their eyes, and returned to their unit with a story they'd never tell. An unmarked Gulfstream jet sat on the tarmac, engines warming up. Lex emerged from the terminal building, rifle case in hand, dressed in civilian clothes that somehow still looked tactical. She handed Morrison a tablet showing satellite imagery of a compound in Somalia. "Our first target together," she explained. "Ibrahim al-Shabaab, warlord responsible for 3 school massacres in Kenya, protected by corrupt UN officials who take his bribes. Conventional forces can't touch him. But we can. We're not conventional forces anymore, Morrison. We're the reckoning that comes for people who think they're untouchable." She smiled, that cold, dangerous smile he was learning to appreciate. He's in a fortress, 200 fighters, air defense systems, thinks he's safe. And you can reach him. There's a ridge 6,200 meters away with perfect sight lines to his bedroom window. It'll be the longest confirmed kill shot in history. Lex's eyes gleamed with professional pride. "Want to help me make it?" Morrison shouldered his own pack, feeling the weight of his new life settling onto him like familiar armor. "Let's go hunting." They boarded the plane together, a ghost and a dead man, setting off to save lives by taking them, working in shadows so others could live in light. As the jet lifted into the morning sky, Morrison looked back at Afghanistan one last time. Somewhere down there, his team was waking up, mourning his death, carrying on the mission. And somewhere else, monsters were planning attacks, hurting innocents believing themselves beyond justice. They had no idea what was coming. The White Djinn had a partner now. And the reckoning had only just begun. The end.